Year's Day, the Rose Bowl, 5 Eastern, ESPN. And to me, this is the most pure college football kind of matchup that we could have gotten. Two iconic, historic brands, you know, and the Block M and the Script A. You got the Rose Bowl. That is the best venue, not just in college sports, the best venue in all of sports. I don't care what you're throwing out there. The Rose Bowl, hands down, the best. You're going to have the sunset off the mountains. Like, it's going to be awesome. Michigan favored by 1.5. Believe this opened at Michigan -2. It's down to 1.5. Regardless, though, it's going to be a phenomenal game. I think that spread, just so we're real, that margin, whichever way we lean here, is going to be a tight one. All right, Alabama, this is not your typical Bama team. Because what do we think about Alabama historically? Dominant. Nick Saban and company just going wire to wire. They're preseason #1, and they just run the table all the way through, and they end up in the college football playoff, and they're right there. Like, that's not what this Bama team is. This Bama team, you see it a lot on social media. Lank. L-A-N-K, let all naysayers know. How often have we talked about Alabama having any naysayers, right? This is a new Alabama team, and I think they love that underdog role. I think they feed off of it. I think they relish it, and I also don't think they played their best football game yet. Because we said it about the game against Georgia in the SEC title game. Alabama was super impressive. Nothing otherworldly about that performance. They played a really good Georgia team, really tough. Jalen Milroe had less than 200 yards passing. They didn't have a tremendous day running the football. You factor in sacks to that. But all that's to say, Alabama being in this playoff spot, having made it in there. I don't know if you saw their reaction when they found out they did make the playoff, but it was Nick Saban giving a little golf clap. There was no eruption. There was nobody standing up and hooting and hollering. It was like, good. Good. That would terrify me if I had to play Alabama in the college football playoff. Now, however, Michigan, they're not terrified. They're not terrified because they expected to be here. Not just because of the way they played in the Big Ten title and being undefeated. Of course, that feeds into it. But I mean, like, rewind the tape all the way back to spring practice. This was always the mission for Michigan. This was always what everyone signed up for. Because they've been here the last 2 years. Personnel has changed around a little bit. The mission has not. 0 for 2 the last 2 seasons. Especially last season, fired a lot of these guys' belly. That's why a lot of these guys did come back. That's why they're top 5 in returning production, or at least you have to imagine that helped things. There's an extra edge to this team. Yes, because of what happened last season, but also all that's happened this season. Jim Harbaugh getting suspended the first 3 games of the year. And then getting suspended the last 3 games of the year as well. This is a team that I think is tighter than ever. External noise sometimes has a negative impact on locker rooms. This is not the case. I think they are chomping at the bit to get after it. So what does it come down to for us in this game? I think the first thing that we're watching is the trade-off / the demand for explosive plays. Because if you picked Alabama, you probably think that Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton are going to stretch the field. And if they stretch the field, well, then that probably means they're scoring some points through the air, having some quick strike plays, and that probably means there's pressure on Michigan to match that. And so if you're an Alabama fan, again, if you're picking Bama, period, you probably think that's the way this game is going to go. Now, if you're a Michigan pick here, if you're saying, all right, the Wolverines, they're going to show up to the Rose Bowl and handle business, you think there's probably not that many explosive plays, period. And if there are explosive plays, it's coming later in the game. Because Michigan, the way that they operate, man, how many times have we said it? Dating back to last season, it's the equivalent of putting that heavy weight on your back. They are going to wear you down from quarter 1 to quarter 4. In that first quarter, man, you put the weight on your back. You're like, all right, this isn't too bad. I can kind of hold this up. By that 45th minute, by minute 50, as we get closer and closer to the end of that game, you start to kind of lose your balance. You crumble. That's what Michigan does. And a big part of that, obviously, is going to be limiting explosives and being able to go on those long drives to where they don't have the sense of urgency, where they got to match you score for score, and they're chasing a 10-point deficit. That's not the kind of game that Michigan, I believe, wants to play. And again, if you're picking Michigan, probably not the kind of game that you're anticipating them playing. Very, very big impact on tempo, depending on what kind of explosives we get here. Now, neither team, to be clear, is giving up many explosives, period. Both are giving up less than 5 yards of play defensively. A big thing to watch here is the conflict that Jalen Milroe is able to create with his legs. We said it on our live show yesterday, talking about X factors. When Isaiah Bond, Jermaine Burton, whoever you want to fill in the blank there with an Alabama receiver, if they're able to stretch the field, what I think would happen then is you create more real estate across the board. And you would anticipate Michigan probably trying to spy Jalen Milroe to some degree, or at least address what he does with his legs. And to be real, like, Jalen Milroe is probably going to be the best athlete on the field. And so if that spy is even just a little bit out of position, Jalen Milroe is going to eat that angle up and get north and south. And at that point in time, that third level of the defense got your work cut out for you. And if we're beating you through the air, well, then I might be a little bit more slow to turn around and try and attack Jalen Milroe when he gets downhill. I might kind of stick on my receiver because I don't want that explosive play to happen again. Again, that's a very big if, but a huge variable. If they can get some plays downfield, the conflict Jalen Milroe creates with his legs, ooh, it's a game breaker. That's a game breaker. Now, here's the other thing for Michigan. Their game breaker is what they do in the trenches against Alabama. This is who Michigan is. We've seen it all year long. We saw it probably most visibly against Penn State, where they were like, you know what? We know J.J. McCarthy can throw the football, but we're not going to do that at all. We're going to run the football for the entirety of the second half. Their philosophy is we got a sledgehammer, and we're going to take it to your wall of a defense for, the first 2 to 3 quarters. And if it doesn't break, we're still swinging the sledgehammer. So their ability to wear down this Alabama defense is going to be huge. A lot of Blake Corum, a lot of Donovan Edwards. That's pretty much par for the course. Now, Alabama, they're only allowing right around 3.5 yards a carry on the season, but especially against Georgia, what they did in that third and second level, those safeties and linebackers closing the space, not allowing perimeter runs, that was huge, and that was why they were able to limit Georgia to the number they did, less than 3 yards a carry, that is. Michigan's success, to me, in this department looks like 3 to 4 yards a carry. We don't need the big 20-yard run. Probably you'll get those later in the game if you're able to get 3 to 4 yards in the first quarter. Just chipping away, chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. And then eventually that big, that big run pops, that weight gets too heavy, then you wear them down, controlling the tempo, and you make Jalen Milroe in that offense watch a fair amount of this game. Also, whenever you're able to kind of create some pressure on the ground, you're able to kind of give them a little bit of squeeze running the football, that shot will then be there at some point in time. At some point in time, one of those safeties will creep down too close to the line of scrimmage, and you'll hit Roman Wilson over the top, you'll hit Colston Loveland over the top, whatever that looks like. Now, Alabama's success in this kind of department looks like you force Michigan into a lot of passing situations. To put it more simply, you force Michigan into a spot where they have to go with their offhand. And this is kind of something we've talked about all year for Michigan, even in the preseason. We said this, for Michigan to win a national title, in this spot to beat Alabama, you will need J.J. McCarthy to deliver for you like the mailman. Like this is the game. This is the spot where, hey, we're probably going to be a little bit, at some point in time, evenly matched in the line of scrimmage. Maybe not the entirety game, but at some point you will need him to make some throws for you and push the ball downfield. Explosive plays, right? That's the thing. I think you'll need that to some degree in this game if you're J.J. McCarthy. Now, the subplot within that, too, J.J. McCarthy being the difference maker with his arm obviously is a big part of this, but I think also what he does with his legs will be huge. We've seen Alabama struggle with this against Auburn, against LSU. Mobile quarterbacks, they've had an issue sorting out that motion. Did a great job stopping the run against Georgia, but you're not worried about Carson Beck running the football. You are with J.J. McCarthy. What he does whenever he tucks it on a read option or on maybe they throw something else in there and a little bit jet sweep quarterback midline, like stuff like that, Alabama struggled with. J.J. McCarthy, he's a good athlete, man. Right around that 4.5 range as a 40-yard guy. Like, he can move for you. How much of a impact does that have? How much does Michigan even need to go with that? Because I think that's going to be a huge changeup that we'll see in this ball game. I think that could be a little bit of spice that Michigan might need to pick up some big first downs on third down against Alabama. Then also what he does ad-libbing. I mean, Alabama, they play a lot of man coverage. It's really easy to play man coverage for like 2 seconds, but if you got to play man coverage for like 4 or 5 seconds and J.J. McCarthy's back there Pirates of the Caribbean style and you're having to chase him all around the yard and he just goes backyard football, running right, throwing left, like that is the longer the play goes, in my opinion, the more it will favor Michigan in that kind of spot for J.J. McCarthy. So keep an eye on that and keep an eye on how Alabama handles that. Now, here's my big question. Who plays better tennis? Saying, JD, you're playing football in the Rose Bowl. I'm not a tennis guy. Neither am I. But by nature of the style of the game, both of these teams will feed on the other team's mistake. Like Alabama, the way they beat Georgia was not giving them anything to feed off of, was not giving them any turnovers. Alabama, if Michigan makes that mistake, will be able to then, I think, create some distance. Like, let's say Michigan fumbles somewhere on the 50, Alabama's got it going in, and the score is already 3-0 Alabama, well, then Alabama goes and puts a touchdown on the board. It's 10-0 Bama. Whoa. Then Michigan might have to press a little bit more. That would not be a world you want to live in if you're Michigan. Now, on the other side of things, if Jalen Milroe reverts back to what we saw against Texas in week 2, puts the ball in harm's way a couple of times, not only will Alabama be probably having to play from behind, they'll probably be having to play from behind, and they'll have to watch a fair amount of this game as Michigan goes on a drive for like 6 to 8 minutes and takes the life out of your defense. All right, that's enormously impactful just for Michigan being able to wear down Alabama, much less score. The longer defense is out there, the less it will favor Bama. So again, we went back and forth a lot on our pick on this one. I could see either team winning the football game, to be 100% honest. The thing I'm really leaning on the most is a new Jalen Milroe. Like, Jalen Milroe has had 1 interception since the month of November started, taken much better care of the football. They're leaning much more into what he does. And when I watched what they did against Georgia, a lot of quarterback design runs around the edge. In Georgia, defensively, I think is a little bit more athletic than what Michigan brings. I'm not saying that Michigan isn't as good as Georgia defensively. I'm saying if you got to chase Jalen Milroe, I wonder what that third level and second level of the defense will be able to do in terms of closing up space and attacking a guy like him, because they have not seen a guy like him the entirety of the season. To be fair, there's not too many guys like Jalen Milroe playing football right now at the collegiate level, so let's make sure that's clear. The way they attacked Georgia gives me confidence they can do the same thing to Michigan, because it wasn't a thing where they got out-schemed against Georgia. It wasn't like Georgia just didn't see it coming. It was they got out on the perimeter, they beat them to the edge, and then were more physical out there. If they can do that again, I think Alabama has to feel pretty good about their chances. So, again, I think it's back and forth. I think it's going to be a very, very low margin for error kind of game. Could see it kind of being an NFL style in terms of the flow of the game. I think Alabama ends up winning. I think it's super close. I'll take them by a field goal. I think it's Bama 29-26 in the Rose Bowl, and they punch their ticket to the national championship. So what that would mean, I think it is further proof that there is nothing fluky about this Alabama team. Because we remember football in snapshots, and we think about week 2, we think about Texas, we think about Milroe not even playing the next week against USF, and all that just feels like such a distant memory if the confetti's falling in Pasadena, and they're up there holding that Sugar Bowl or Rose Bowl trophy, rather, and they're headed to Houston, which, by the way, is the hometown of A1, Jalen Milroe, a little homecoming for him. So I've said it all season long. I'll say it again. This Alabama team is not playing over their head. They are not somehow having some superhuman effort. This is a team full of 5 stars and full of guys that portaled to Alabama that came from a really elite level of play and are now playing to their level of talent. So nothing fluky. They're just kind of meshing at the right time, and we'll take Alabama to win. Obviously, they're the underdog here, so we'll take them to cover as well. So we got Bama punching their ticket, being one of those teams headed to the national championship game. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.